Hey everyone, I want to talk about one piece of advice that I got in the early stages of my career that really helped me stand out, even as an introvert. And that's be interested and not interesting. When I started working, I saw that extroverts or people with large personalities tend to dominate conversations or get noticed a lot more. At the beginning, it used to give me flashbacks of high school when I saw that the cool kids or the interesting ones were the ones that always got all the attention. So I always wanted to be cool in some way or interesting in some way so I could also be noticed. But I digress. So that's why this advice is so important. I feel like being interested in someone or interested in another person's story is more important than being interesting yourself. It helps you stand out while also helping you play to your strengths as an introvert. In essence, what I'm saying when I say be interested and not interesting is that try to make the other person the center of attention rather than attracting all the attention towards yourself. And to begin, it's always very important to establish a rapport with the other person. So understand a little bit more about them or genuinely ask them questions. Let's say you're on a phone call, you can bring back some stories that they talked about previously, or you can find out something about them and ask them general questions about, how was your weekend, or how's the family, how are the kids, things like that, to break the ice and try to give the signal that you're focusing on them rather than talking about yourself. And there are many ways to do that. You can keep a note of what they've been talking about in the previous conversations, or you can look up on social media. Don't be creepy, but try to find just something about them that you can bring up in the conversation that gives them the impression of, hey, this guy actually knows something about me or is genuinely caring about me, my story, instead of talking about himself or being the alpha in the room, so to speak. Another thing to note about this is you have to understand the body language of the person. Are they being disinterested or defensive? So something like leaning back into the chair and doing something like this. When you see something like that, you have to immediately realize that you have to get their attention and get their interest back in the game. And how do you do that as an introvert? If you have a dominant personality, you can probably try to be bombastic, but that is counterintuitive because that makes them recede into their shell even further. What you're supposed to do is try to get them back into the conversation by taking a step back and giving them the stage, so to speak. That would help them go from like this to listening to you or being receptive to what you are saying. It could be the ice-breaking small talk kind of thing, or circling back to something that they've said. Another thing is to, as an introvert, you can always be observant of everyone in the room. And what's very valuable especially in meeting situations that I've noticed is try to crystallize what everybody's talking about in just one sentence or two sentences. So you can just say, just to summarize what we've just discussed, so and so, whatever it may be, just to crystallize everything. So now that topic is done, you can move on forward. And they go from, if you're continuously circling around the same things over and over again, people are like that, sort of receding back into their chair, they can come back and be interested by leaning forward. Some more things you can do is say very brief things that attract their attention. Something like, in the next 2 minutes, I'm going to prove why this approach is the best approach to help our business goals. When you make a declarative statement like that, people start leaning forward. And I'm not saying you have to be bombastic about it. It's all about brevity, right? Like a very Spartan approach towards communication. Maybe Spartan is a very negative way of saying it, but crystallize everything and say it in 1 or 2 sentences that make them interested again, re-interested once they've lost interest, and then giving you signals that you should move on. Another thing to remember is be more on the defensive rather than being on the offensive. So what I mean, the simple example of this would be saying, am I making sense? Instead of saying, do you understand? When you say, do you understand, you're focusing on the other person, you're putting them on the spot, you're again making them uncomfortable. And as an introvert, again, this comes naturally because the locus of the attention is away from you. You're diverting attention from yourself and putting the onus on them, saying, am I making sense? Taking a back foot in that conversation has a friendlier tone of inquiry rather than something more accusatory. So being cognizant of what you are saying and how you are coming across. So if you're a bit too aggressive and you're a bit too taking the front foot, let's call it, and you're being aggressive and people are slowly going back, that's not a good way to do it. And I believe personally that this comes a lot naturally to more observant people who like to scan the room and take notes about everything and understand what's going on, and interjecting at the right moment, saying, to crystallize what we've discussed so far, here are the key points. That helps you move on and then gives you again the impression of that you are interested in what they are saying rather than unnecessarily trying to strut your stuff or show off. So that was the long and short of it. Be interested in the other person rather than trying to come across as interesting. Let me know your thoughts. If you like what I said, give me a like on this video. If you don't, feel free to comment on what you think is a better way to engage as an introvert, where every bone in your body basically opposes being in the center stage. How do you leverage your inner strengths as an introvert to be noticed without making yourself interesting? Let me know in the comments below. Again, thank you so much for watching or listening, and as always, goodbye and good night.